Welcome to the Trader, a Traitors podcast. I'm Matthew, a writer and 100% Traitors superfan working in TV development. The Trader features deep dives into every episode of English-speaking versions of The Traitors, as well as contestants with interviews. And this series of the podcast is all about Series 3 of The Traitors UK. To help me dive into the unbelievable episode 11 today is someone who is of great significance to the podcast, but has yet to appear on it until now. Callum is a comedy writer and performer from South Wales whose writing credits include BBC Radio 4's The News Quiz and DMs Are Open. Last year, Callum's one-man show, The Strange Affair of Paul, debuted as part of the Camden Fringe. And if you listen to the podcast regularly, you will have heard me talking about this. The show, which was presented in the style of film noir, revolved around Paul from season one of The Traitors Australia and his mysterious lack of screen time. Despite being Welsh, Callum doesn't have the accent, though he could pull a Charlotte and fake one if needs be. Callum, how are you today?
I'm not bad, thank you, Matthew. I'm not bad at all.
It feels like a sort of full circle moment for me because this was like sort of destined. You're a Traitors fan. You wrote your show about Paul and Traitors Australia. You listened to the pod. Now you're on the
Yeah.
pod. It's
Yeah.
all.
I feel as though, yeah, because we met because I literally reached out to you to say, can I please borrow some of your podcast, stick it in my show? And now I am on that very podcast that I asked to borrow a bit from. So yeah, I owe you a lot of gratitude for letting me do that, for letting me steal that little bit of audio so that I could tack it onto the end of my show and hopefully make somewhat of a good show.
No gratitude needed. It was such a good show. I absolutely loved it. It was very cool to see and hear little bits of the podcast in it, but it was such good fun. And, anyone who's listening and who has watched Australia season one, you
Hmm.
will understand why would someone write a show about a person from that season? But Paul's mysterious edit was so strange, and
Yeah.
you made such a good sort of you had such a good perspective on it. Really, really good fun.
Yeah, I think I just became a little bit obsessed with Paul and his quirks and his lack of screen time. I had to do something with it. So
Yes.
a weird film noir based fringe show was was what it turned out being. But there we are. But
Yes.
you also benefited from it as well with because you won the tracksuit, didn't you?
I won Paul's actual tracksuit from the show, which is safe in my room. I do need to wear it on the podcast at some point, but my dream is that Traitors Australia will be revived somewhere, somehow,
Yeah.
and that will be my moment to resurrect Paul's tracksuit. So it's sort of in the wings, waiting for that special moment.
I'm just shocked that you don't wear it around your house 24/7, to be honest.
Well, obviously that too, but
Oh,
I've got to protect it.
of course. It's a valuable
Keep it
item.
safe. Yes. So we mentioned Charlotte, we made a little joke, and what do you think about Charlotte? Because she's still in the show. She's made it to this point. You sent me that bio for me a while back. She could have been gone by now, but she's still here. How do you think of Charlotte?
Well, to be honest, at first I was I was annoyed at her because she did the very thing that I wanted to do if I ever went on the Traitors, which was to use an accent other than my own. I've said that to people before that if I was going to go on it, I'd want to have a bit of fun with it and use a different accent. And so when I saw in the first episode that there was a person on there doing an accent and not only doing an accent, but doing a Welsh accent, which is the thing that I don't have, even though I'm Welsh, and it's something that I have always felt really rubbish about. I was a little bit annoyed at her. But she's grown on me over time, and I think particularly since she's become a traitor, she deserves to be in the finale
hmm
because she's actually shown herself to be a good traitor. I mean, she one-upped Mina, which, Mina was essentially the best player out of all of them for a long time, and then Charlotte managed to one-up her. But also, like me and my brother were talking about, oh, is it unfair that if people who have become traitors late in the game, if they end up winning, is that they haven't have they earned it as much? But in the case of Charlotte, she kind of has earned it because she has been lying to them all the way through. It's not as though she's only been lying the last couple of episodes. She's actually been lying all the way through via her accent. So
Yeah.
I think actually, yeah, she has grown on me a lot. I just wish that I mean, I just wish that I had a Welsh accent, but I think that's my problem, not her, and I shouldn't have gone to her.
Yeah, I agree with everything you've said about Charlotte, and I discussed this very thing on the most recent episode of the podcast, which only appeared hours ago online. But I said the same that I don't mind that Charlotte wasn't a traitor the whole time. I think the time that she has been a traitor, she's used it really well, and I reckon that even playing the game as a faithful and managing to survive is somewhat of a skill anyway.
Yeah.
So she managed to avoid banishment, which is admirable. So I am not mad at her for being around.
And it's actually a pretty good Welsh accent, to be fair,
Yeah.
as well. So
Well, I take your word for that. I think you're probably a better judge of that than I am. So, before we get into this incredible episode, episode 11, it is time for Callum and I to set up our own game of betrayal and deception. This is the Traitor. The mission for Callum and I from here on in is to tell a lie to each other. Our lie has to be a fabrication, a made up fact, big, small, about the traitors, about ourselves, or anything else. For example, I could lie to Callum and say that I have bought the painting from the Traitors Bar with the four deathmatch players' names on the graves on eBay for £1,000. However, I couldn't lie by saying I didn't find this episode exciting and tense and nerve-wracking. That would be a fake opinion. Of course, I felt all of those things. So we're looking for fake facts and false pieces of information rather than fake thoughts and feelings. At the end of the episode, we will guess each other's lie and trade our listeners. You get to join in too and see how good you are at traitor detecting. Callum, are you ready to betray me?
I am indeed.
Let's do this. Our game begins now, and it is time for us to get into episode 11, the penultimate episode of Traitors UK Series 3. We start off with our usual recap, and we're reminded that Joe was murdered, and Leanne won a shield to protect her from the final night of murder in the mission. Suspicions seem to be falling on the male traitors, mainly that theory's been led by Jake, and Mina is finally, unbelievably banished. Before the night ends, Leanne, I think naively, tells three players that she has the shield. And Charlotte then gives Freddie an ultimatum, recruiting him as a traitor. Um, I just had this thought as well, Callum. If your lie is that you aren't really Welsh and that since the moment we first spoke, you've planted that seed, you've sort of inceptioned me, I'll be very upset. Uh, so we start off the episode in the turret, and it kind of just cuts back to Charlotte and Freddie immediately deciding that they will murder Leanne. So Charlotte, it seems like, doesn't have to try too hard to convince Freddie to do that. And he thinks it'll clear him of suspicion because he's really close to Leanne, no one will suspect him. Obviously, he has no idea what Charlotte is planning. And my favorite bit is that Charlotte hands Freddie the pen, and she's like, "Oh, here you go. You just
Yeah.
need to write Leanne's name down." Like it's so wonderfully evil that he's doing it himself. Like, yes, my first murder.
And he has no idea. No, he's so like naive to it. He's so fresh to being a traitor that he has absolutely no idea what she's got planned.
Yeah, and I mean, I think on the last episode I sort of criticized Freddie a bit, and I was like, "What an idiot! How does he not read?" But you're right. He's just been recruited.
Yeah.
This is all new. He's suddenly in the cloak. It's the middle of the night. He's in the turret. He probably does not have time to stop and think, "Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Why she's chosen? Although I don't think that's that much of a reach. I think he should have realized why she's chosen him,
Yeah.
but he would never stop to think, why is she so keen on Leanne? Is there something going on here? So I guess I
Yeah.
can't be mad at him for that.
I think he knows that she is going to throw him under the bus, and that's why she's, recruited him, is so that she can throw him under the bus down the line. But he's not thinking that that's right away. He's not thinking that that has anything to do with, who they're going to kill that night.
Yeah,
And that, unfortunately, is his downfall, I suppose.
yeah. And Charlotte is in her interview telling us that she feels very evil, but very proud of herself at this point.
Mm.
So next morning, it's breakfast. Charlotte and Jake are the first two to arrive. And Charlotte is telling us, the viewers, she realizes she has made herself vulnerable by bringing on Freddie, but she's still finding it all very exciting nonetheless. And Jake reflects on Mina's words as she left. In her speech, where she revealed she was a traitor, she says this thing about being a traitor from the beginning, like I've always been a traitor. So he wonders if that was a little bit of a clue. Does that therefore mean that someone else here is a recruit? I, I don't. Do you think Mina meant that way?
It certainly stuck out to me when she said it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just because no other traitors, I think, have said that. Faithfuls might have said it, oh, I've been a faithful since the beginning, but
Hmm.
then that doesn't mean anything. Um, but I think she's the first traitor to say that. So I do think I know that when she said it, it stuck out to me. Whether
Hmm.
she meant to say it and whether she was giving any kind of hint, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say what kind of hint that she could give with that because,
Hmm.
I mean, you don't have to be a genius to work out that the traitors have probably recruited at
Yeah.
some point, and that not all of them are going to have been there from the beginning. So I get why, like, Jake was thinking it through, like trying to glean anything that he could from it. But I don't think there's a whole lot that you could glean from that.
Yeah, I agree. I think Mina was just kind of toying with them because, like you said, it's this thing that the faithful sometimes say, even though it
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. Because if you're faithful, of course you've always been a faithful.
Yeah, yeah,
So I think because they say it, she was just sort of having a little play with them at the end by saying, I
yeah,
have been from the beginning, because then
yeah,
they think, oh my God, she's a faithful. And then she says, a traitor. Yeah,
yeah,
like you said, even if she was hinting someone here's a recruit, that doesn't help. That doesn't pin it on a particular person. So
no,
I don't, I don't really think they can do anything with that information.
no, no,
But I get Jake, you're trying to grab onto anything at all.
yes,
Freddie and Frankie arrive to breakfast next, and of course, he's panicking about having to lie for the first time, and he hates that. He has been a faithful this whole time, and people have been accusing him of being a traitor, and he's been denying it all this time, and now here he is, he's actually a traitor. Next up, the door knocks, and in comes Leanne and Alexander. Now, to us, that's not a surprise, but to everyone there, well, everyone apart from Charlotte, that's very confusing. And of course, Freddie doesn't get it. He thought that they murdered Leanne last night. So he jumps into action and quickly sort of says, well, does that mean there's been a recruitment? What's happened? He's asking Leanne, like, what's going on? Because she's looking at him with this sort of suspicious look. And initially, she doesn't really say anything. She's sort of just looking around and smiling because she knows she's got the shield. And obviously, we're about to see, she received a letter telling her that she's supposed to be murdered. And eventually, she does say, it means someone tried to murder me. So yeah, we flash back. She comes into the room with the chair and the letter, tells her that she's been murdered, but she knows, well, it doesn't mean anything. I've got the shield. I can't be. And so she immediately starts theorizing at that point, it must be Freddie or Alexander because they're the only two people who I didn't tell about the shield. And at this moment, I thought, surely, like, yes, I know that's the obvious conclusion to jump to, but surely then you'll get to the next step, which is, wait a minute, it could still be one of the other three people
yeah.
and they're a traitor and they've set all this up. Like, that's not a wild leap to eventually get to. So, back at breakfast, Leanne does this thing. I didn't think she would do this. She instantly just tells them all what's going on. She instantly says, well, I told three people about the shield and it was Frankie and Jake and Charlotte. And I don't know what you think about this. Like, I sort of thought, take a minute to think about it. Like, you've had all night as well to plan what you're going to do. Maybe I'm wrong. Do you think she should have just told them straight away?
I mean, it's very in character for Leanne, I would say. She doesn't hold back. She just says stuff immediately. She's not exactly subtle or which to some extent is perhaps a reason why she wouldn't be a traitor. Um, but yeah, it's I mean, it didn't surprise me that she came out and just said it
Hmm.
because there's very much in character for her, but is it the wisest move? I don't know. I mean, it means, she could have used that to her advantage, certainly to try and weed out who she thought, the traitor, what the traitors were. Is it somebody who has tried to murder her and couldn't because they, didn't know that she had the shield? Or is it somebody who fully well knew that she had the shield
Yeah.
and has tried to, make it look like it's somebody else? She could have, as you say, if she'd have thought about it a little bit more, maybe used that to her advantage. But that's just not Leanne's way.
No, it's not. And I guess I'm trying to think it through. Like, well, what is the benefit of waiting a while? Like, do you just wait and see if anyone messes up and sit,
Yeah.
wait until later in the day? But then I think, I guess what you've got an advantage by instantly revealing it, I suppose, because, well, I guess it works. It gives whoever the
Yeah.
traitor is suddenly has to think on their feet. So maybe if you do just say it straight away, you can watch the other people in the room and think who's
Mm.
panicking right now, like who
Watch them
doesn't.
squirm.
Yeah, so maybe, if you wait until later in the day, I guess you're giving the traitor time to think up excuses. So maybe
Yes.
Freddie would have been able to think his way out of it later. Maybe not.
Yeah.
So maybe she did do the right thing by just coming right at it. I don't know.
I mean, essentially, she did put Freddie on the ropes because he does go on to come up with an excuse, a very much on the moment, on the spot excuse,
Yeah.
which perhaps isn't the best excuse he could have come up with.
No, but I prefer Freddie. Yeah, Jake and Leanne are yeah, they instantly focus on Freddie and Alexander, and they're like, well, surely it's got to be one of you because neither of you knew that Leanne had the shield. And Jake says to Freddie, well, did you know she had the shield? And Freddie just goes, yeah, I think so, yeah. And I thought, okay, you've started to lie. You could just stop now, Freddie. Just don't say anything else.
Yeah.
But then he keeps going, and he says, yeah. Mina told me. And Leanne's like, Mina told you? She didn't know. And so Freddie is just instantly screwed. He's like, well, someone must have told Mina because Mina told me. And it's just so uncomfortable
Yeah.
seeing someone having to lie on the spot and know that they've already screwed up. Oh, it's so bad.
You
So,
you can tell that he is not used to being a traitor.
yeah,
Immediately when he's forced to tell his first lie, he completely messes up. And because I mean, the Mina thing just makes absolutely no sense. Like,
yeah,
I mean, not only did she not know, but also like they weren't exactly close. She was trying to throw him under the bus. Like she
yeah,
was trying to get rid of him, he was trying to get rid of her like the day before. So yeah, it was. I mean, I know that he was like under pressure to come up with a lie, but there surely was a better one that he could have come up with.
yeah. I mean, I guess in his mind, he thought, who can I say told me, well, I'll just pick someone who's not here so they can't disprove it. So I'll just pick Mina.
Yes.
I mean, I think he should have just sort of gone along with the truth almost and just said, no, I didn't know and I'm
Yep.
being framed. Like I didn't know you had the shield, but that doesn't make me the truth. Like he could have
Yeah.
just
Which is exactly
told
what
the
Alexander does.
fewest lies.
Yes. Yeah. Because
Wait,
Alexander says, essentially, oh, I didn't know. And that's gonna make you think that I'm suspicious, but I didn't know, and that's just how it is. And Freddie could have done exactly the same thing, but
yeah.
fine.
Oh, Freddie.
Yeah.
So yeah, Leanne is sort of saying, well, okay, Freddie, if this is true, it leaves Alexander. And Frankie then whispers to Alexander at this moment, you could also pretend to have murdered. In other words, Leanne could be making this all up.
Yeah.
cut to Alexander saying sort of the same thing in his interview, and he even says it's relatively transparent. Leanne is lying and trying to pin it on me. So at this moment, he thinks it's Leanne who's the traitor, and she's concocted this whole plan.
Yeah.
Claudia arrives and tells them, it's their penultimate breakfast. Reminds them they caught a traitor last night, and everyone has made it through the night. And she says how and why that happened is for you to work out. And she drops her little clue for the mission today, asking them if they've made wonderful memories here. So I sort of assumed, okay, it's a memory-based challenge. At least some of it is, anyway.
Mm.
So Claudia leaves. We're back to Leanne. She's still trying to sort of pin it down. Is it Freddie? Is it Alexander? Or then things do move along, and she's wondering, well, could it be one of the other three that I did tell? And she says to Freddie, now I need to work out if you tried to murder me. And Freddie does this sort of Linda thing where he goes, yeah. He just like
Yeah.
agrees with it. Sort of subconsciously maybe. Just a little moment that made me laugh. And Jake kind of finishes off the breakfast scene quite aptly by saying, well, actually, he says now we can't trust anyone. They're sort of back to square one. In a way, he's like, this didn't really clear up anything. There's all sorts of possibilities still, except for Freddy's massive and obvious lie.
Yeah.
It's time for some discussions off around the house. I get the impression throughout the episode that Freddy keeps trying to get Charlotte alone, but he just can't really do it. And he tries to. I think they both go to the library, but Alexander joins them really quickly. Um, Jake is in the kitchen with Frankie and Leanne, and he basically realizes Freddie must have made up that Mina story. And Leanne is insisting, I didn't tell Mina about the shield. In fact, she, well, she doesn't say this. I think I'm just saying she hadn't told anyone about the shield until nighttime after the banishment. So it's not even like she told one of those three people and then they passed it on to Mina. Like it's actually impossible that Mina could have known, unless Mina really did read her body language at the mission when she opened the chest and it had the shield. But like, there's just that's almost impossible.
Yeah.
So Jake, though, does make this incorrect assumption here. He says, well, that means that Freddy's the traitor and that he and Mina were going head to head at the round table and they were trying to get each other out because they're both traitors. So he's
It's
half right, but
almost there.
yeah. But I mean, I
Um,
guess that's a fair enough deduction to make. Like, I can't be annoyed at him for that.
yeah.
But he's just slightly off a little bit. And even if it doesn't matter, if it still helps him catch the traitor, I guess it's whatever. So we go back to the library and we've got Alex or Alexander, Freddie, and Charlotte. And Alexander's putting forward this theory that Leanne is faking this murder attempt, and he sort of does this thing. I've watched the episode twice, and like three times he keeps sort of honing in on Charlotte because Charlotte's like, "Oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that," and he's like, "But why not?" And she's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I don't know. I'm just suspicious of everybody. I don't know what's." And he just keeps sort of saying, "But why did you not think it was her? Like, why did you dismiss that?" Like, it makes me think this is going to be significant, or that Alexander is
He
really clever and he's noticing that it's weird that she didn't think of this. I don't know.
I definitely, when I watched it, I thought, "Oh, is he cottoning on to her?" And I think even they put in a like piece to camera with her saying, "Oh, he's on to me," kind of thing, or he's becoming suspicious of me. But then I don't know, or is it him just saying to her like, I don't know, why didn't you think of that? Why didn't you think of Leanne before? Like, is he just trying to get things clear in his head why other people haven't
Mm,
suspected Leanne before? And it's just the way that we know that Charlotte's a traitor, that we're interpreting it as
yeah.
he's being suspicious of her. But that whole like dynamic of like Alexander in the room with Charlotte and Freddie is just very tense and very weird. Especially like because I mean like Charlotte and Freddie are like essentially both trying to like appeal to him almost to like throw the other one under the bus, like to almost.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there's so much that happens in this very short space of time.
Yeah.
And this really small scene, yeah, Freddy's obviously in, crisis control mode, and he's like, well, he's asking them, is it a possibility that one of the other three who knew about the shield, maybe they are the traitor? And
Yeah.
Alexander says this funny thing. He says, I don't think it matters who knew and who didn't. I think it's irrelevant. And I
Mm.
thought, is it irrelevant? Is he just trying to cover himself? Does he mean, like Jake said at the end of breakfast, that everyone is still potentially guilty and it hasn't really
Yeah.
helped to solve anything? I don't think it's irrelevant. I wouldn't describe it as that.
No.
But I guess everyone could still possibly be a traitor. It hasn't proved things one way or the other.
Yeah.
Um, and
But then
Alexander, sorry, yeah, yeah.
If that's the case, why why is he so strongly thinking that it's Leanne?
Well, yeah,
If he's telling people, oh, well, it doesn't matter, it's irrelevant, like who knew what and what not, he can't clearly think that and also think, no, well, it must be Leanne. Like she's clearly like a traitor who's like double bluffing us by, saying that, she's been murdered and they couldn't kill her.
yeah,
So yeah, it was a weird thing for him to say that it was irrelevant.
yeah, yeah. The final thing here that also maybe is nothing, maybe it's something, is Alexander keeps nodding at Charlotte. He's got this sort of odd body language, which is not unusual for Alexander, but she finds it weird that he keeps just sort of looking at her and going. So she leaves the room. Freddie asks Alexander, do you think there was a recruit? Who was it? And Alexander nods towards where Charlotte had just been sitting to indicate her. And of course, Freddie jumps on that and he goes, yeah, I thought the same. So yeah, I'm wondering at this point, is this going to come up? Is this bad for Charlotte? What's going on? Meanwhile, Charlotte has gone off today. It seems this happens immediately after. Maybe it's not.
Mm,
The three women gather in the billiards room, and Charlotte is focusing on Alexander's strange behavior and the way he's nodding and how he keeps pushing Leanne as the traitor. And she asks Leanne to close the door. She said, "I'm paranoid. Can we get a bit of silence?" So Leanne closes the door. They're focusing on Alexander and Freddie. Of course, the boys then arrive. Minus Jake's not in this scene. I wonder if Jake was off doing his confessionals at
mm.
this point, perhaps. And yeah, Alexander and Freddie come in. Leanne gives an epic eye roll as they come into the room because she wanted to talk about them. It's it's very Joe. It's giving me
Yeah,
Joe. And Leanne tells Freddie again, "There's no way you could have known about the shield. Like this doesn't make sense." And I guess Freddie's got no choice now. He's told the lie already, so he's going to have to just double down on it.
yeah,
And I guess he does an okay job. He says, "Well, no, Mina didn't explicitly say you had the shield. She she assumed she was just asking me if you had it to gauge how I would react." He says that Mina thought you smiled when you got the shield, and she assumed that because we were close that I would know. And so Leanne kind of seems to buy that actually for the time being. She's like, "Oh, okay, maybe Mina was just trying to catch you out. She was trying to get the truth from you, and you've misread that." The conversation then comes back round to Alexander's suspicion that actually there wasn't a murder, there was only recruitment. And Leanne said, "No, they can't recruit. They tried to murder me." And Alexander just goes, "Well, so you say." And she says, "So it happened." And they sort of agree to disagree almost. Leanne just keeps insisting, "No, it was supposed to be me." And of course she knows for sure because
yeah,
she had the letter. She was brought into
yeah,
the room. She read that. The, in this scene, they don't show her saying that. Like, I wondered why didn't she say, "No, I actually got the letter. I can describe the room. I can tell you what the letter says." Maybe she did and they just cut it out.
yeah. Or is it something that she's not allowed to say?
Yeah, maybe it's a bit
Or is it
too.
some sort of strange rule that you can't be that explicit about?
Yeah, I did wonder that if they're not supposed to talk about, the camera people and the production
Yeah,
crew. So she can't say, "Well, here's who was in the room with me and here's who told me to go into." So she kind of has to talk around it. I think she could
yeah,
probably still say, "I received a letter last night,"
yes.
without ruining the illusion. But
Yeah,
uh,
because if when recruitments have happened, haven't
mhm.
they before said, "Oh, I received a letter from the traitors
Yeah,
to recruit me," or "I
yeah,
received it," So it would only be the equivalent of saying that, I suppose.
yeah. So I think she probably did, and they just don't really show us that moment,
Yeah.
which is fine. Alexander leaves, and Leanne is still saying that she just doesn't trust him one bit. And then Freddie brings up what Alexander had mentioned in the other room that he thinks maybe Charlotte was recruited. And Charlotte's not here anymore. And but they all just dismiss it. They're all just like, no way, as if Charlotte was recruited. So it really suggests that they generally see Charlotte as one of the more trustworthy people. That they just don't really seem to question it
Yeah.
because they're so focused on Alexander, and they're like, yeah, of course he would say that. He's probably a traitor. And I made a little note here actually that I think you're a fan of Alexander, as am I. Alexander has sort of become this season's Jazz for me. Sort of like he's not always right, but he
Mm.
often is. He's
Yeah.
very logical. He's really good at deducing things. I think he's quite good at keeping all lines of thought open. Like he's not incredibly decisive on
Yeah.
something that he can't be sure of, but I think he thinks several steps ahead. I think what we see happen in the mission ends up being proof that he sees where the game's going and has thought of ways out of being banished. So,
I actually take that as a massive compliment because more than one person has compared me to Alexander in recent days. I mean, I've had like my brother, I've had a work colleague, I think my friend even said it as well. Like, so to say that, yeah, he's good at playing the game, I take that as a personal compliment. I mean, I personally don't see me being like Alexander, by the way. I don't see that. But it's a compliment that I'll take. He's a great guy. And as you say, I think he is better at playing the game than he gets credit for
mhm.
because I think he does just take stock and think about things a lot more than perhaps some of the other players that are still left in the game. Um, but yeah, I don't know, he's certainly a favorite online. I know that as well. Lots of people have been
Yeah,
gushing over him.
yeah, lots of he's all over social media. I think he's sort of fan favorite of the season. Like I think when this ends, Linda is kind of the iconic, hilarious figure, but I think
Yeah.
Alexander has amazingly become this standout player that people have just really come to love,
Yeah.
which is so surprising from the way it all be he wasn't even there for the first couple of
No.
episodes.
Well, I think
So
he's got that sort of like Hugh Grant kind of bumbling Englishman kind of thing. In fact, I wouldn't mind seeing him in a rom-com. That wouldn't be that maybe that's the next his next thing after the Traitors. But
well, I have another suggestion for what Alexander should become after the Traitors, but I'm saving it for when we get to the mission. But I'm so
uh,
glad you said that
okay,
because you have reminded me of a thought.
let's
But
hear
yes,
it.
but I agree with what you've said about him. Yeah, absolutely, he is great. And the other players say it later in the episode. They say like he's really charming,
Yeah,
and
very
I
much so.
guess it comes across on screen too.
Yeah,
So it is time for the mission, and Claudia tells them that there will be really three challenges today, three challenges within one overall mission, and they could possibly win £12,000 here. She tells them this is by far the most important mission you have ever faced. Whoever banks the most gold individually will gain a power more valuable than we have ever seen. They will become the seer. Aha! So now we know, we get what this big twist is. What is this thing she's been alluding to all this time? So she explains the seer wins the power to know for sure one other player's identity. They'll invite this other player to a private meeting tonight. And Claudia tells us this power could turn the entire game on its head. She said this phrase before. She will say it at least three more times in this episode. They're really hammering it home. And the thing is, maybe I'll get to it. The seer could end up being not that useful, and and maybe it would have actually very little impact. I think it will have
yeah.
a massive impact, but depending on how
Well,
it turns out, it could end up sort of be nothing. But they
that
keep going. It could turn the game on its head.
yeah. If a faithful got the chance to be the seer, and then they asked another faithful, and both of them just said, "We're both faithfuls." It feels like that wouldn't have much of a impact. It,
I mean, I
but
guess other people could still be like, I don't. There was
yeah,
something funny about the way they said that. I think they're both lying. But yeah, maybe I don't think it would be as exciting if
no,
it's like you said.
no.
Uh,
All I know is that every time she kept on saying seer, I just kept on thinking of the New Zealand singer who sings Chandelier. That's all I kept on thinking.
yeah, see
Yeah,
ya.
yeah.
Um, So, in fact, Sia and Claudia both have that fringe in common,
They
so
do.
there's a connection
Ah,
there.
they probably some sort of club that they're part of. Yeah.
So after Claudia explains this, Leanne really quickly says to Freddie, "Oh, I'd love that." And she says, "I could just put it to bed and pick you." And it seems like this throwaway comment, but it ends up being important later on in the episode. I reckoned at this point, I was sort of trying to think ahead and think, well, what's the best thing to do in the game at this point? I thought everyone should just start saying to one another, "Oh, pick me. Oh, if it's you, just pick me, pick me." Because I think if you're a traitor, you look really confident and
Yeah.
self-assured, so you're giving a great impression. And if you're a faithful, it's fine. You still might just convince someone else to pick you. It makes you feel safer in the game. It makes you much less likely to be banished.
Yes.
Unless a traitor is the one who becomes the seer, and they could ask you and you're a faithful, and then they go and lie about it. But yeah, I just thought everyone should just start saying to each other, "I'm happy for you to pick me, pick me." Alexander
Yeah, yeah.
seems to be the only one who very conspicuously does that.
Yeah.
But
But then when he does it, he's considered a little bit suspicious for doing that. Almost.
well, partly, yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So the first challenge is the clown challenge. 15 creepy clowns appear from the woods. It's all very freaky. The players get a bit of a fright. The clowns each have a balloon. Five of them have skulls in their waistcoats, which means that their balloon, presumably, we never find out. Their balloon must have like a little plastic skull in it or something, or it just doesn't have anything in it. And 10 have cash, like a £200 written inside their waistcoat. Um, and so, yeah, they have to memorize which clowns have got what and go up and pop the balloons. If they get gold, it's banked. If you pop a balloon from a clown who had a skull, it eliminates anything that you've banked so far. And Jake suggests cleverly, let's just focus on the skulls. There's no point in trying to memorize 10 things rather than just 5 things. So they all basically agree to work as a team and help each other.
Which was a genius idea, by the way.
Yeah.
I thought that was really like the best way of doing it. And it's actually really surprising to see that like this late into the series when there's like only a few of them left and they're all clearly very suspicious of each other, that actually they can still work well as a team because
Mhm.
that ends up paying off. You know, that strategy that Jake puts forward, which as I say, is by far the best way of doing it, actually
Yeah.
ends up paying off big time for them and ends up working really well. And it's just mad to see that even though there's like all these like, you know, as I say, suspicions that they constantly go back and forth on one another, like thinking each other are traitors, that they actually have learned to work as a team a lot better, especially considering like how they were in like early challenges, like the rowing challenge or
Mm.
whatnot, how they've grown to just work well together as a team, which was actually really nice to see.
Yeah. And I guess with this mission, there's no point in sabotaging it. Like you're not,
Yeah.
you're all contributing towards the prize pot for whoever is going to win it. But a traitor wouldn't get anything out of deliberately picking the wrong balloon,
Yeah.
unless I don't know, unless you wanted to seem like you didn't. I was going to say unless you wanted to appear like you didn't care about being the seer. But why would a faithful not want to be a seer? So yeah, I think
Yeah.
there's no point in not working together to get the most money here.
Yeah.
So yeah, it goes ahead. The clowns before the mission really they do this like they reveal their waistcoats and then they do a little dance routine. And Claudia says it's a 10 from me, which made me laugh. And the popping begins. Basically, they each bank £200. Then Claudia asks if they want to continue individually. Do they want to try for more? Frankie, Freddie, Leanne, and Jake go again, meaning Charlotte and Alexander don't. Um, I wondered. Yeah. Does that have will it have any effect? That they just said, "Oh, I'm fine." Like, will it make them look like they're not desperate to be the seer, and that's a
Um,
suspicious? I don't think it will.
I think, I mean, it's just them being cautious more than anything, which, particularly for Alexander, is very much in character for him.
Hmm.
What I find interesting though is that both Charlotte and Alexander said they didn't want to go, and then Jake did. But when Jake goes, Alexander goes, "Oh yeah, I think it's that one," as though like, well, if you thought it was that one, why didn't you yourself go for that one? Which I thought was a bit strange. And maybe
Yeah.
if somebody had picked up on that, they think, why is he telling other people to go for something that he wouldn't go for? But I think that's just, that's just him. And as I say, I think it is just them being overly cautious. But then I don't think Charlotte seems that bothered throughout these missions about being the seer. Weirdly, she doesn't make much of an effort to try and get that status as the seer, which
Yeah.
is an interesting tactic because I think, as you say, it would benefit to look like she wants it for a start, and then if she does get it, then that really benefits her because then it means that nobody's finding out that she's a traitor. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I do find it a bit interesting that she didn't try a bit harder, but hey,
Yeah.
she didn't want to risk it at the same time. There is sense in being cautious, I suppose.
Yeah. I can only assume that her plan is she wants to she's created a persona in the game, which is probably not incredibly different to just how she is naturally, that she is just sort of quite gentle and quite quiet and laid back and very nice. So I think it just helps her to continue to appear quite timid almost.
Yeah.
And maybe she is thinking, well, Freddie's trying so hard to be the seer and making it so obvious. Does that will that make me look like a traitor who's desperate to get
Yeah.
it? So I'll just do the opposite and I'll just sit back and I'll try but not too hard. So I,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's probably what she's doing.
yeah.
The next challenge then is it's the return of the haunted dolls, and there are six chairs with a doll each, and each doll has a random amount of money assigned to it, and the players just have to pick one. It's kind of a game of chance, partly. They pick a doll and they sit in that chair. They can pull the cord on the back of the doll as many times as they like. It's a gambling game. It's a game of risk, and so I don't know if there's much skill in it, but the dolls reveal how much money they've made. But at some point, if you pull the cord too many times, the doll will tell them they've been too greedy in a really creepy, weird voice. And all the dolls have got their names on them. We've got Jean, we've got Camilla, we've got Ethel, I didn't see all the other ones, but Francesca creates a bond with Jean. And Freddy's doll, Camilla, has the most demonic voice out of them. £500. It's like this gremlin. Um, I don't know if you have watched RuPaul's Drag Race at any point in your life.
Not enough probably to get your reference.
There is, for listeners who are Drag Race fans, there's a doll called Lil Poundcake who was created by one of the queens years ago in a mini challenge, and Lil Poundcake has become this character that reappears throughout Drag Race. And in the most recent US season, there's like a giant Lil Poundcake. I just thought Jean is the new Lil Poundcake.
Nice.
And I hope someone else who watches Drag Race was thinking of the same thing. So, Jake, Alexander, and Charlotte all crash out. Basically, they pull the cord, and at some point, it tells them they've been too greedy. They lose everything. Frankie and Freddie each make it to £600, and Leanne makes it all the way to 700. Even Claudia sort of looks like she's getting really like excited about the game, and she's very caught up in it, and says, "Who knew pulling a doll's cord could be so tense?" So at the end of this little challenge, Leanne is the most banked so far. She has £1,100, followed by Frankie and Freddie, who have 1,000. The others are really trailing behind. They've got sort of between 200 and 400. So it suggests that they're probably not going to be able to catch up. So this year will probably end up being Leanne or Frankie or Freddie. And it's time for challenge three. It's basically a miniature version of the hanging cages that Alexander and Jack and Fozia had been in a while back. And it's a similar task too. Run around the woods, find coins, bring them back, deposit them. Then what they have to do is hoist the cage when they're ready. Claudia tells them it's a 5 minute time limit, but there's no countdown, no clock. They have to judge when the 5 minutes is up. And if they raise the cage too late, they bank nothing. So they probably want to err on the side of caution. Maybe a bit too cautious. Off
Yes.
they go. Freddie is, again, he's so desperate to win because, it makes sense. A traitor then they can do what they want. They can ask whoever they want. Whoever they're asking is not going to find out in return what the seer is. Um, Jake, he acknowledges, yeah, he's not really got much of it. Like, he's going to try his best, but he knows that he's probably not going to win. My moment of the episode is Alexander zooming by at ridiculous speed in the background, and Claudia saying that was very fast, like a pony. I cackled at this bit so much. My Lindsay, who's been on the podcast, who was on episode one, sent me a voice note because she was watching the episode just today, just laughing at Claudia calling him a pony. And this is what I said I was going to come back to, Callum. That
Yeah.
you said that Alexander could be like a Hugh Grant type of figure.
Yes.
I think Alexander should be the new Bond. I
Okay.
I've said it before. I think he wasn't just a diplomat. I think Alexander was a
It's
spy.
wow. Okay.
He's done the work. He's basically a method actor already. James
Yeah,
Bond, 007 Alexander.
I see it. And this is like his audition for it.
This is his audition.
And by that token, I think maybe then if he's the Bond, then Claudia's the Bond girl.
I thought you were going to say Claudia's the Bond villain.
Okay,
She
I mean
could
either way.
she could be both.
She could do both. Exactly.
Yeah.
She's got talent. Okay, I see that. I like that theory very much.
So Freddie is banking lots and lots of coins, it looks like, but Alexander then just gives Frankie all of the or most of his coins, it seems like, and he tells her, "Look, I trust you." So he wants her to be the seer. Obviously, it's so that she picks him. He wants to clear his
Yeah.
name. And he also says he's probably not going to win anyway, so what's the point in him even trying? He might as well give them to someone else. So um, she says in an interview, "Oh, it's really kind." But also, is it suspicious? Like, why is he doing this? Is it just a ploy to look good in front of everyone? Like, what?
Again, it is very consistent with his character. He continually is the selfless one who like
Mhm.
sacrifices himself. He did it like from the very first episode on the train,
Yeah,
and then he did it. We saw a couple of episodes ago where he was like carrying up those big statues like up the hill, like taking loads for him, loads at a time. He's continually this guy that's like, oh. I'll do something sacrificial. I'll do something selfless. So it makes sense that he, looks at the amount that he's earned at that point and goes, well, I'm clearly not going to win it.
yeah,
So I might as well be selfless and help somebody else too. But then I guess there is that selfish tinge of, and if I help her to get it, that kind of benefits me because if she beats me, then, she can prove that I can prove to her that I'm faithful.
yeah,
Um, but there's it's almost too nice of him. It's almost too like generous of him and too like selfless of him that it almost like does look suspicious. And you can understand why Francesca does kind of go, that was nice, but like, why was he doing that? Because
yeah,
like again, it is essentially as much as they pretend like, oh, they're all working together as a team. It is a game where only one person, well, not only one person can win, but it is a selfish game. You have to be thinking about yourself all the time. And so it does look a bit suspicious sometimes when Alexander is being overtly selfless. It's like, are you trying too hard to convince us that you're not a traitor? And obviously we know he's not a traitor, but I can understand why somebody like Frankie would look at him and go, that's a bit suspicious. You seem to be trying a little bit too hard.
yeah. Although what I would say is, I I got the impression he wasn't making as big a deal out of it as he could have. So I thought he was sort of quite surreptitiously saying it to Frankie,
Hmm.
enough that she knew what he was doing, but not to get the attention of everybody else. Like he wasn't
That's true.
in front of all five or six of them shouting, "I'm going to help Frankie, Frankie, I want you to pick me."
Yeah,
He wasn't being incredibly
that's true.
conspicuous. So maybe I'm misreading it. I thought he wanted her to know what he was doing, but he was being as implicit as he could be, rather than making it so obvious that everyone looked at him and thought he's trying too hard to appear like a faithful. I don't know.
Yeah, I think later in the episode, Freddie does reveal that he didn't know that Alexander gave all his
Yeah,
keys
yeah,
to Frankie. So you're right. Like it's not like he's making a big show of it. And I also don't think there is anything like too ungenuine about. Like he's just trying to, yeah, in the moment, it's seeing what would benefit him best. Well, me and Frankie get along. I trust her. I want her to be able to trust me this, so I'll give her my coins because I'm not going to win anyway.
yeah,
Like, I suppose there's nothing to, there's nothing sinister about it for sure.
Yeah. So as the mission goes on and they're all counting in their heads, Frankie suddenly announces they have 30 seconds. So everyone foolishly listens, runs back, hoists their cages. I mean, it probably doesn't matter that much. It costs them some extra money, a little bit of extra money maybe. And Charlotte does say, "Wait, who said 30 seconds?" And Frankie goes, "Oh, it was me." And she does say, "I might have been a bit premature." And she is. They all hoist the cages. The challenge ends, and Claudia tells them they still had another 2 minutes. I would have been so annoyed, but I mean, I was trying to put myself in the place of the players, and at the start, I reckoned I think I'm quite good at counting time. I think I'd be quite good at just focusing in my head and counting.
Yeah.
And I think if Frankie had said that so early, I would have been like, she's way out. I'm just going to keep going a little bit longer. But
Yes.
then again, maybe you panic. Someone says 30 seconds, you freak out. You don't want to lose what you've got.
It shows how much authority she has as, I guess, this sort of mum figure, the like
Mm,
older woman figure in the group that like if she says it, everybody just immediately falls in line and just goes along with it.
yeah,
And even though she was saying like, oh, I don't know if I'm she was essentially saying, I don't know if I'm right, I might have been a bit early about this. Like they still just kind of go along with it because Frankie said it, so it
yeah,
must be right. But yeah, I would have been a little bit annoyed that whole 2 minutes were left.
yes. And despite that, they do win £5,200 from this challenge, which means altogether now they have an extra 9,100 to add to the prize pot. And Claudia tells them again, well, more specifically, I think here, she says, "I will announce who has won the power of the seer at the end of tonight's round table." And for a moment, I was sort of confused. I thought, why are they waiting until the end of the night? But then I realized, oh, I guess it's in case the seer ends up banished.
Yes.
And it would sort of, they'd then have to pass it along, and that just feels a bit awkward. So they'll just wait. Um, and Freddie tells us that he's 1000% confident that he's going to be the seer. And actually, I'll come back to this at the end. I think he probably did have the most money because of something that Claudia says later, but I'll get to that at the round table. So I think he probably was supposed to be the seer.
Hmm.
Back at the castle then, Alexander has this moment where he leaves one room to go in and he wants to find Frankie alone, and the others realize what he's doing. And it's at this moment actually that Jake says to the others, Alex was giving Frankie all of his coins, which you mentioned, Callum. So Freddie's
Yeah.
like, oh, I didn't know that. And so Frankie gets Alex, or Alex gets Frankie on her own for a moment. He wants to know what she's thinking, and she says, well, I'm going to, it's between you and Freddie tonight, let's be honest. And Alexander's still saying he's sure it's Leanne. He's probably going to go for her tonight. He thinks that she faked this attempted murder. Alexander then comes back into the billiards room, and Leanne is, she's a bit sarky, unnecessarily rude to him. And she's saying, "Oh, did you get your water? Did you have a good chat?" And I thought, why are you being so unpleasant? He's allowed to go and have a chat with someone. Like, the thing is, she did it that morning. She did it with Frankie and Charlotte, and they closed the
Yeah.
door. So I
Yeah.
thought you can't really be annoyed at him for going off to have a secret chat with someone. Like, it was a bit much.
As though their relationship has always been a bit frosty,
Yeah.
the Anne Alexander thing, which is a shame because I do actually think I like both of them, and I do think that weirdly, if they weren't in this game, they might got on very well.
Hmm.
But she quite often is quite sarcastic to him, and I don't think she necessarily understands him sometimes, that
No.
he's actually just being quite genuine and quite nice. And I think she doesn't see that. I think she interprets that in a completely different way. But yeah, it was a little bit uncomfortable to watch when she was, he's literally just gone for a drink to leave the room. Like as you say, he's perfectly allowed to do that.
Yeah. I think, like you said, her default is to believe that he's a traitor. So she just reads
Yes.
everything that he does as deceptive and sneaky. And I
Yeah,
don't think she's been
completely.
open-minded enough about him,
Yes.
which I think a few of the players are guilty about. Again, I keep saying this. I'll come back to it. I will come back to it though. Um, yeah, she then they sort of have a little moment just between them, and she's still really annoyed at him for suspecting her, and it ends up with just the two of them. actually then having what seems like it could actually be quite a nice moment, and she refers back to, look, it's because you were the one person who survived the death match, and the way that you arrived late in the game in the cage, and it's just you now. I just want to say here, I don't know. I do and I don't. It bothers me why they're so obsessed with this. They are
Yeah.
obsessed with the idea that one of the people in Deathmatch must have been a traitor, and that
Yes.
one of the people in the cages that returned to the game must be a traitor. And
Yeah.
I understand being maybe suspicious of that and it being a possibility, but it isn't evidence. There's no
No.
proof that that is the case. But Leanne and Jake, I think, particularly seem really fixated. Jake talks about it at the round table tonight, and I just sort of want to say that's not proof of anything. There's no point in using that. They need to
No.
let it go.
Yeah, especially because it's been quite a few episodes now since the death match. Like, obviously, everybody else who's in that death match has now gone and proven to be faithful.
Mhm.
And it just is really clutching at straws. It feels like you need to move on to that. And if you do think that it's Alexander, like, there needs to be new reasons why. I don't think you can keep just going back to like, oh, because he came in late and oh, because of the death match. I think like there needs to have been more evidence since that it is him. Like, it just feels really silly, as you say, just keep going on about this death match. I thought we'd put that to bed. I thought like that had gone, and then when it got mentioned again, I was like, ah, why does this keep on coming up? Like, it's complete. It was silly to begin with, to just assume that there must be a traitor in there, but to keep on thinking that is like nuts. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, Freddie and Charlotte have this little moment alone in the corridor for what must be the first time that day, it seems.
Yeah.
And because Freddie says, I didn't know that you knew Leanne had the shield. And Charlotte just has no choice but to go, yeah, no, it's really backfired. And she sort of pretends. She says, oh, I thought it would frame Alexander. Which doesn't really make any sense. So Freddie now knows he's in trouble. He's telling us in his confessional that he can't trust Charlotte. In the kitchen, they talk with Frankie and Jake about Alexander. Frankie's saying that actually she trusts him less than she trusts everyone else, which I was a little bit surprised at.
Mhm.
But she also isn't sure about Freddie, and she refers to herself as his mummy.
Yeah.
So she's torn between both of them. And it's time for the round table. Here we go. Claudia reminds the viewers that this is the last time a player will reveal their identity when they're banished. Freddie's heading into the round table livid. He says if he gets banished, he's going to take Charlotte out with him. Alexander knows that he's going to have to fight. He says he doesn't want to have come this far just to bow out now. And Charlotte is also torn between Freddie or Alexander. She's going to have to wait and see what way does it look like the vote's going to go and just make the right decision, hopefully at the last minute. So Claudia speaks to them, tells them they're almost at the end, and for one of you, your journey's almost over, reminds them again about final banishment, where there will be a genuine reveal, and at the end of the round table, she'll reveal who the seer is. Then she does something a bit differently and says tonight she wants to do something unusual. They all have to look at each other in the eye and say, I am a faithful. And I do sort of think, how do you look everyone in the eye around a table
Yeah.
in 4 words? That's quite difficult. Alexander does this very conspicuous, I am a faithful. It's a bit odd. I think Leanne draws it out by just adding extra words. So she goes, I am a faithful, 100% faithful, so that she can look at everybody. It's a little bit funny. And so they all do it, right? And of course, Claudia says, well, the thing is, you're not though. So at least one person is lying. Discussions begin. Leanne starts, and she references that little moment she had with Alexander today, where it was just the two of them, and she sort of says that was the first time we've really had a one-to-one chat. And where you really just said to me face to face, you were faithful, and no, she says she's doubting things. She doesn't. She's like, you're not totally off my radar, but that's really made me question everything. And Jake, again, he's bringing up this thing. He's like, you're right. Yeah, either you've just been really unfortunate because you were in the death match and you arrived late, or you've played a brilliant game as a traitor. And again, I just thought it doesn't have to be
one or
one
the
of
other.
those,
Yeah,
and it doesn't mean anything that he came in late. But hey, Frankie says to Alexander this thing that we mentioned before. She says you're incredibly charming, and so
yeah,
was Mina. Maybe we're just being fooled again by you. And Alexander then says, "Well, Frankie, if you are the seer, can I suggest you go for me?" And Frankie's like, "Yeah, I know that. That's why you gave me the money. I get it." Alexander says that he's going between Leanne and Freddie. He reiterates that he thought Leanne could be a traitor pretending that she was the intended murder victim. And Leanne then comes to Freddie and she references this little moment that could have been nothing, but she's picked up on it. She says, in the mission, Claudia had just told us about the seer. And I said to you, oh, wouldn't it be great if it was me and I could use it to finally figure out, you could just tell me that you're faithful. And she says that he had this very lukewarm reaction to it rather than being really excited and saying, oh,
yeah,
yeah, that would be great. So she thinks that that was suspicious. And Freddie defends himself by saying, oh, I'm just fed up. Like I'm being targeted all the time. What did you want me to say? And she says this funny thing to him. She says, you're my favorite person in here and one of the people I trust the least. So it's just it's a funny dynamic to have someone be your favorite person and they're your top suspect.
yeah.
Um, but she's struggling, and then she asks him, "Well, who are you suspicious of?" And predictably, he says, "Well, Alexander, you didn't know about the shield, could be you." And then he says, "And then yourself, Charlotte." Of course, they like to use the word yourself for no reason
Yeah.
whatsoever. She rolls her eyes, and he tells her, you've been a bit under the radar. You had heat on you, but then you didn't. You're still here. You're not being murdered. It's a bit weird. Charlotte's saying, "Yeah, no, it is weird. It's weird. We're all here." And everyone else around the table sort of seems to like smile and laugh with that. Um, and this is this really funny thing, and I can't do a Welsh accent, so I won't try. But she says, "I'm
Oh,
literally
please
as
try.
I. Oh no, I can't. I mean, I can give most accents a go, but Welsh, jeez. No, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna
Okay.
offend you, Callum. I'm not gonna
Oh, you
offend the
wouldn't
Welsh
offend me.
people. But she says, I'm literally as faithful as they blink and come. And it's just like, that was the funniest little phrase to use. And she says Freddie's comments quite left field. She's annoyed. Why was this the first time I'm hearing this? You could have spoken to me
Yeah.
today. And then she deals this sort of almost deciding blow, I reckon. And she just goes, well, for what it's worth, Alexander, I'm not going for you, if that helps the group. So I thought, oh, it is over for Freddie. If that she's basically saying, I'm voting for you, Freddie. Everyone else, you should probably just follow suit. So I think Freddie knows what's coming.
But it's a weird thing to say. Like from our perspective, it makes sense that she says that. She's saying, as you say, she's saying, "Oh, I'm not voting for Alexander because I'm going to be voting for you." But from everybody else's perspective, it sounds we. It must have been weird that she, for some reason, has just decided that she's doesn't doubt Alexander and she only doubts Freddie based
Mm,
on very little that's been brought up at that point in the conversation. So,
yeah.
like, it almost like, wouldn't you think? I don't know. Wouldn't you think, oh, well, he's had a go at her, like he's brought her name up, so it just looks like she's retaliating just to bring
Mm,
oh, I'm going to vote for you just because you're voting for me, which is I don't know, odd thing of doing it. And that never normally works out. Normally when people go down that route, I mean, we saw it with like Linda, for instance, and we've seen it in past series, like with Ash, of that thing of like, oh, you voted for me, so I'm going to vote for you.
mm,
That normally doesn't work out so well.
yeah.
Um, but for some reason, because they trust her so much, she gets away with that, even though essentially that is what she's saying. She's saying, "Oh, well, Freddie, if you're going to vote for me, well, I'm going to vote for you."
Yeah.
Um, yeah, she weirdly gets away with that.
Yeah. I wonder, I hadn't really thought about it, but that's a great point. I wonder if in the next episode someone's gonna come back to that and say, oh, that's weird that you turned on him at that moment.
Yes.
Why did you do that? I mean, she'll just defend herself and say, well, but it made me think he was a traitor,
Yeah.
because it was so weird. But
Yeah.
yeah, it possibly does look a bit suspicious.
Yeah.
And if that wasn't enough for Freddie, then comes the nail in the coffin. So Leanne comes back to this pivotal point. I just think it seals the deal for Freddie. His comment at breakfast about knowing Leanne had the shield from Mina, and and Freddie that he just makes the error of all errors and says, "I was in the bar and Mina came up to me," and it's a done deal at this point.
Yeah.
Jake. It takes them a minute to get there, but Jake says, "Well, it's convenient that the person who told you isn't here, and why would Mina have told you out of anyone? She was
Yeah.
sort of gunning for you. Why didn't she ask anyone else about this?" And then Frankie comes in to clarify things and says, "Wait a minute, you're saying Mina told you this. When did she tell you?" And Freddie says at the end of the night at the bar, Frankie says she wasn't there in the bar at the end of the night. She'd been banished. And Jake's going, yeah, this Jake's just like, this doesn't make sense. This does not add up. And even Frankie goes, oh, Freddie. And Freddie's just sort of like mumbling and muttering and like,
There
oh,
is
maybe it wasn't. Maybe I got it wrong.
nothing he can do in that moment, and he knows it.
It's just awful. Yeah. So it's time for the vote. And I thought, there's no way anyone can not vote for Freddie after that,
Yep.
surely. And that's what happens. Jake, Alexander, Leanne, Frankie all vote for Freddie. And they're all kind of apologizing and saying, oh, like, I love you. I'm sorry. I feel bad. And Alexander actually admits he's kind of just had to go with the group, even though he was looking at Leanne. When it's Freddie's turn to vote, of course, he votes for Charlotte, which is very significant. He could have written Alexander's name. That seems like that was what other people were leaning towards. But the fact that he's picked Charlotte, um, well, Charlotte then goes on and votes for Freddie, and it's not a surprise. So Freddie's banished.
Yeah.
Before his speech, though, yeah, I just wanted to take a moment to talk about this vote. Is it still a problem with the game in general that's just inescapable that an outgoing traitor who knows they've been banished can use this last chance to basically out another traitor? Like, is it fair? Is it annoying? Is it?
Um,
And again, this is a. I'm assuming everybody who's listening to this has seen series one of the Traitors UK.
yeah.
If not, skip ahead like 30 seconds, right? It makes me think again of Kieran in series one and his very obvious nods to Wilf being a traitor. And there's been so much debate. Was that cheating? Was it fair? Was it not fair? I don't think it was cheating, but I still like it's a little bit unfair to so obviously out
Yeah.
another traitor in this way. And so I was a little bit annoyed with Freddie. I thought, man, Charlotte's played such a good game, and at the last minute, you've kind of ruined things possibly for her. I don't know what you think,
think
Callum.
I think there is a difference between certainly what Kieran did and what Freddie did
Yeah,
because Kieran essentially I mean there was nothing subtle about it. He said something like, "Oh, I'll leave you with this," and
yeah,
then
yeah,
said Wilf's name, which again a little bit controversial. I've never known quite how I felt about that. Was that a good move or not? I guess it's just kind of a loophole or a kind of slight flaw in the game rather than because there's nothing wrong with playing it like that with him putting Charlotte's name
hmm
down. He's perfectly within the rules of the game. Like he's not doing a Kieran, he's not bending things. But it is perhaps a slight flaw because obviously that is what's going to happen. Like if, like they're going to throw their other fellow person under the bus, like at the last, because they have nothing else to, like what else is he going to do? Like he could put Alexander's name down, but he knows he's going out. So if he's going to do anything, if he's going to try and, make any impact on the game going forward, he's obviously going to put Charlotte's name down. It, yeah, it's a bit of a flaw, but then again, it does kind of make it spicier and more interesting.
yeah,
Like, if he put Alexander's name down, or if he put anybody else's name down besides Charlotte's, would it have been quite as interesting, quite as dramatic? I don't know. So it's not something that I dislike, as long as it does just stay to that, as long as it isn't more of a Kieran thing. I think possibly since the first series, they've been told that they can't do stuff like that. Like
yeah,
explicitly say, or on well, pretty much explicitly say, this person's a traitor. Um, I think as long as it is just putting a name down. And from everybody else's perspective, they could just see that as him just clutching at straws and just going for a random person at the end, rather than him putting a traitor, a fellow traitor's name down.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was okay for me. I don't mind it.
Okay. I mean, I guess, yeah, he's only been a traitor one day. He's been a faithful the whole game. If he's going to side with anyone, he's going
Yep.
to stick with the faithful and give
Yep.
them one last little bit of help
Exactly.
within the rules, which is vote for whoever he wants. And
Yep.
he's going to vote for Charlotte and see if that can help them.
Yep.
I I did maybe again, I do this a lot on the podcast. I very much read into things that perhaps don't need to be read in, but I also did think when he was standing up to give his speech, he did look to Charlotte a few times and he was sort of rubbing his cheek. I
Right.
thought he was trying to give them something about her and draw their attention to her. Maybe not, but
I thought he was going to do something because he said in his speech, I love you, Frankie. I love you, Leanne. I thought he was going to name every single person but Charlotte. And I was like, no, that can't, don't do that.
yeah,
But
yeah, I
no,
think
he only
that
did those two names.
yeah, and you mentioned this before. Like there are clearly rules in place, and the players will sign NDAs, non-disclosure
Yep.
agreements, and they'll sign almost like a contract to say if you break the rules, if you're a traitor and you announce the or heavily indicate the identity of another traitor, there will be consequences. I don't know
Yeah.
what those consequences are. I don't know if they get fined, if they are removed from doing any press and TV appearances. I'm not sure, but they'll be warned incredibly seriously. Do
Yes.
not ruin this game or you'll be in massive trouble.
Yeah. That's not
Um,
clear.
so yeah, he stands up to give his speech. He says it's been the honor of his life playing the game. I love you, Leanne. I love you, Frankie. And as they all do, big dramatic pause. I am a traitor. Leanne screams like she just can't believe it. Frankie's just looks so shocked. I mean, I guess they knew it, but they didn't want to know it. And Alexander makes this wrong assumption here, but again, it's justifiable. He says, "Oh, he went traitor on traitor last night with Mina," not realizing that that's not really what happened.
Yep.
And he's so close. It's like, no, he didn't do it last night, Alexander. He did just do it 60 seconds ago. And Charlotte even says in her interview here, he's gone, but the fact that he voted for me isn't ideal. And now it's time for Claudia to reveal the identity of the seer. She repeats again what's going to happen and tells that this is the moment I said earlier I would come back to, one of the many moments. She says, I can now reveal of those sitting here, the person who banked the most gold. So I just had that little phrase of those sitting here made me think,
Right.
I wonder if it was Freddie who had the most, but now he's gone. So the
Yeah.
next person is Francesca. And she talks a little bit more and then immediately takes Frankie away. I love it. It's so dramatic. I didn't think it would happen like this. So Frankie just has to stand up. But again, it's the best. It's epic TV. We get this. She's not allowed to speak to anyone. She leaves the room. We've got this like cinematic walk down the corridor with Claudia. Claudia just sort of looks at her and nods at one point as if to say like, "Are you okay?" Frankie's taking it so seriously. She's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah." It's just perfect TV. Just incredible. And it's cut with Miv main interviews with Francesca saying, right, Freddie's a traitor. That's one thing off my mind. There must be another traitor. I've got to think so clearly about how I figure it out. Cut back to Charlotte. Charlotte saying that, this is a really scary moment as a traitor, but she says, I've got a good relationship with Frankie. I feel confident she won't pick me.
Hmm.
So back at the round table, they all stand up. Leanne is hugging Alexander, and it seems like they're having a moment of sort of Leanne implying, God, I was wrong. It was him. You're right. I'm sorry. So there's a bit of closeness there. And Charlotte, of course, needs to jump into sort of crisis management. So she's just trying her best to act completely faithful and naive and goes, oh, maybe we've caught them all. We won't know for sure now. Maybe it's just us guys. We're all faithful. So, next scene is another brilliant televisual moment because Claudia takes Frankie to the bar and the bookshelf, says we all have to have a few secrets. There's the seer book. She pulls the book, and this secret compartment opens up. It's just everything. I'm obsessed with the stagecraft of
Yeah.
all. Just so good. and we arrive in Claudia's chamber. And this is not a spoiler. I don't think this is a spoiler at all, so please don't complain. Traitors US is on right now, and they've already sort of used this little room really early on in the game. It's sort of not really a secret to everybody. The players come in and out of it for little secret chats all the time. So it's funny that they've just used it in a very, very different way in the two shows.
Was it
The
not the? It might not have been, but was it not the armory room that they used in season one of the UK
it
version?
could well be. It doesn't look the same, but it probably is the same room, and they just yeah. I did
Yeah,
wonder.
I
They've just
couldn't
sort
work
of
out whether it
slightly
was or
decorated
wasn't.
it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah, it probably is the same space. So they have there are four portraits lined up in the room. Of course, it's Leanne, Jake, Alexander, Charlotte. Claudia explains that at the private meeting with whoever Frankie chooses, the identity of the player will be written in an envelope, and at the end of the meeting, they must burn the evidence. Of course, it's so dramatic. It's very high camp. Frankie goes through the options then. Leanne, she says she's been suspicious of her before, but right now, not really. Jake, again, she has had suspicions, but reckons he would have had to have been such a good traitor. To have thrown other traitors under the bus so early seems incredibly unlikely. He was going from Linda from day one. I think he voted out Armani yeah, I think that was like episode three, four,
Yeah.
very early on. She comes to Charlotte and says, well, I could choose her just to affirm what I think, that she's a faithful. So at this moment, I thought, all right, she's not going to choose Charlotte, no way.
Yeah.
Then Alexander, and she said, I've wound myself up in knots about whether he's a traitor. She's asking herself, do I pick someone I feels more confident with, like as a faithful, like Charlotte, and then I could become in an alliance? Although I thought this wouldn't necessarily create an alliance. Frankie could, if Charlotte was a faithful, Frankie could still be a traitor. It wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily earn Charlotte's trust.
No.
And she ponders again, Alex, why did he give me the coins? What does this mean? And she finishes by saying, my gut is, I need to clear up the people close to me. So is that a hint that she's going for Charlotte? I Well, I'll ask you what you thought about this choice at the end, but we cut to the others in the billiards room. They are all speculating about Frankie. Could she be the traitor? If she is, what would she tell them?
Hmm.
Charlotte even seems to be trying to plant little seeds of doubt and says, "Oh, yeah, she could be a traitor and she could come out and lie."
Yeah.
Um, and then Claudia arrives and tells them, "Players, the seer has made their decision. The person they want to invite to the private meeting is." Charlotte. And I can't believe this. I mean, the producers must be just like rubbing their hands. This
Yeah.
could not have worked out better for TV. This is this is the perfect choice going into the finale. Leanne can't believe it. Charlotte has to do her best job of just like smiling and
Hmm.
not looking too worried. As she gets up, she doesn't seem to say anything. Off she goes. And the others are realizing this throws up so many possibilities. They're wondering, why did Frankie choose Charlotte? Leanne does say, is it because of Freddie's final vote? We head to the meeting. Frankie's sitting at the table. She's pouring her champagne and says, in my heart, I hope she's a faithful, talking about Charlotte. Then I can take a sigh of relief and know that one person is 100% faithful, and it was the person I always thought it was. Meanwhile, Charlotte is walking in slow-mo. She feels like she's pinned in a corner and says it's literally her word against mine. She arrives, she sits down, they look at one another. Episode 11 ends. So, so much. It's so dramatic.
So dramatic.
What, what do you, why do you think Francesca chose Charlotte? And it seems like she's chosen her because she thinks she's a faithful and she just wants to clear it up. Is that
Yeah.
the right decision? What would you have done?
I mean, I think I certainly would have chosen somebody who I suspected of being a traitor. And
Yeah.
it did seem like she was going to go with Alexander, um, which because I mean, she's had her doubts about him, and she was suspicious of, why was he giving her those coins and whatnot. I did see something before. and we started recording, I saw like something on a Facebook group that I like follow for like, Traitors fans that said, "Oh, is this just the producers? Have they told, almost like a conspiracy theory, have they told like Francesca to go with Charlotte?" And I mean, I don't think so. I think it is they've just been lucky, but you can perhaps read it that way that like, why what other reason would she have really for going for Charlotte? Like she, as I say, made out that she was gonna go for Alexander. It makes more sense to go for somebody like Alexander. Then again, at the same time, there are only four people left, and it's certainly for somebody like Frankie, it's not as though she's hugely suspicious of any of them, as in one more than anybody else. She's going to be suspicious of them because that's the nature of the game. But she's not. It's not like she's leaning more towards one person hugely, even if she's a bit more suspicious of Alexander.
I
Hello?
sorry, we almost made it.
You almost did it. I'm just going to turn my charger on while we're in a sec.
Okay.
When did I
The last thing you said was you were talking about Frankie like leaning one way or the other, and you mentioned sort of like something about Alexander. So
ah,
it was
I'll try and finish.
you'd said. I mean, you'd said a fair bit about why you were saying it was a strange decision, and
Okay.
you were talking through. But yeah, you'd said
Okay.
something about Alexander was the last thing.
Okay. I moved on to a better point then. So I'll
Okay.
try and finish the point that I was making and then move on to the
Okay.
better point, if
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Go for it.
Um, yeah, so I think even though like maybe she was a bit more suspicious of Alexander than the other three, it wasn't like she was so much more suspicious of him than she was of the other three, is not so. But the other thing is that I think like it must mess with your head, like being on the traitors, constantly not knowing whether somebody is a traitor or not, constantly being suspicious of people, like, and several times, Frankie would have seen people who she didn't think were traitors to be revealed as traitors. And so I can see why, from her logic, she wants to just get somebody to tell her, I am a faithful, just so that she knows that somebody is 100% a faithful, because she hasn't had anybody for all of these weeks that she could trust
Yeah.
100%. So I can see why you'd want somebody that you can trust. Unfortunately, for Frankie, is that she's picked the one person who she can't trust and who isn't going to give her that satisfaction. But yeah, I think that's probably why she's done it. She just wants that, she just wants somebody who she can 100% say they are faithful.
hmm Yeah, I've thought about this all morning and I've kind of come to the conclusion that actually this probably was the best decision. And I'm sort of just repeating what you've said, but if she had asked Alexander and if he'd said, "Yes, I'm a traitor," and or that was on the envelope, fine, she knows he's a traitor. She doesn't know that there's not one other one as well. She doesn't really know that there's
Yeah.
only one left. So it doesn't completely solve the whole game for her. And
Mm.
even if he says he's a traitor, he might still just go out and lie about it, and she's got a problem. If she picks Leanne, if she picks someone who finds out they're a traitor, yeah, it doesn't help identify all of the traitors if there are more than one.
Yeah.
If she, even if she picked Alexander and he said, "I'm a faithful," yeah, again, it still doesn't help her know who the traitors are. So she's not that much better off.
Yes.
But so I think what you do is you think, well, I'm only going to get to ask one person here. That's not really going to solve the whole game for me. So, my best bet is to find a faithful and know that I could just continue to banish people like we have been doing this whole time and do my best and
Yes.
just get everyone else out the game.
Yeah.
I think that's all she's figured out. That's all I can actually do is pick the person I think's faithful, and she thinks it's Charlotte, hilariously.
Yes.
Yeah, and like you said, she's just unfortunate that she's got it totally wrong.
Yeah.
But she thinks I'll get Charlotte. Charlotte will say I'll find out that Charlotte's a faithful. We'll stick together to the end, and we'll just banish Alexander anyway. We'll just banish him,
Yep.
and if we have to, we'll get rid of Leanne,
Yep.
and that's the best course of action. So I actually do think Frankie's probably made the wisest, the most logical way out of it. I think if I had enough time to think about it, I probably would have done the same thing. But yeah, she's just got it so wrong with Charlotte
Yeah.
that this is going to cause chaos.
Yeah. I
Uh,
think so. I think she has made the right decision. And as you say, like it would have taken me a long time to perhaps come to the same conclusion. So the fact that she knew quite quickly that she was going to go for Charlotte
yeah,
is actually quite, obviously she's wrong, but is quite good, like it's quite skillful that she managed to come to that conclusion, which, as you say, is probably the best conclusion quite quickly.
yeah. What we do know then is, next episode is going to begin with Frankie finding out the truth. Charlotte's a traitor. What? How do you predict the episode playing out? Like, what's going to happen with Francesca and Charlotte? And do you have predictions about who is winning the whole series? Is it a faithful win? Is it a traitor win?
Big questions. Um, so I guess with the whole Charlotte Frankie thing, there are a couple of ways that it can play out. They can, I guess, both reveal, Charlotte can reveal that she's a traitor, and then I guess her best course of action is to then, I guess, try and throw Frankie under the bus in some way. Like just deny it and just say that
Yeah,
Frankie's making it up to throw me under the bus. Um, which is quite a horrible way, which is going to be quite a horrible episode. It was the two of them just essentially accusing each other of being a traitor, and then the other three being completely, yeah, not knowing who to believe out of those two. Um, or does Charlotte try and somehow make a pact with um, Frankie in some way? I don't know
mm,
what that looks like though, because essentially, if Charlotte makes it to the finale, if a traitor always wins all the money, right? And so it's not like
yeah,
she can make a pact with her and say, okay, well, let's just stick, let's like stick together and we'll make it to the end together because only Charlotte can win the money. So it feels like, I don't know, it feels like Charlotte's options are kind of limited. Um, as I say, I think it might just be a case of she has to just accuse Frankie of making it up and saying, well, she's going around saying that I'm a traitor because she must actually be a traitor herself.
yeah,
Um, it's hard. I've got to be honest. I do find it hard at this stage to see Charlotte making it right to the end.
yeah,
Um, if Frankie hadn't picked her, that would be a different matter. I think we'd be looking at potentially a traitor win.
yeah,
But how she comes back from this, I'm not really 100% sure. So I think my prediction would be a faithful. I couldn't say what order they're all going to go out. I think that's beyond me.
yeah. This is a complete 180 flip. Last episode of the podcast finished with me going, Charlotte's got it. She's won.
Yep.
It's in the bag.
Oh yeah.
And now I think the same as you. I think it's a faithful win. I don't know how Charlotte can claw it back. And in fact, this exact moment, I have a message on Instagram from a listener. Chris says, if Frankie's smart, she'll say, this is a bit convoluted, but I get the point, and I hadn't thought of this. If Frankie's smart, she'll say to the others, in speech marks, if I was a traitor trying to deflect, why would I pick Charlotte, who has zero suspicion? If that was my game, like if I was a traitor, Frankie, I'd have picked an easy target like Alexander. And Chris says, not sure if she's this calculating, but we shall see. But I think that's a great point.
That's a good
If
point.
Charlotte comes out and goes, no, she's a traitor, and I'm not a traitor, she's making this all up. Yeah, Frankie will just be like, Why would I have picked you? I would have picked Alexander. He's the
Yeah,
one with the suspicion on him. So, and the fact that Charlotte got the vote from Freddie at the last minute
yeah.
looks weird. I I think Charlotte's going to have to do her best and just act and just lie. I just don't think she's going to be able to do it convincingly enough.
No, no.
So,
It's a shame because she has been playing so well, particularly since she's become a traitor. But there's just, I mean, I can't see how anybody could come back from this. Like, it's not a case of how good you are at acting or like, how skilled you are at lying or anything like that. It is simply like your options are completely limited. And if any of the other traitors across any of the other series have been in the same position that Charlotte now finds herself in, it's hard to see how they could possibly, you know, win it. But
yeah,
but then I don't know, she might surprise us. She might pull something out the bag, like she might somehow put doubt on Frankie in some way. But it just I find it hard to see.
yeah. I mean, she could say, I think Frankie and Alexander are the traitors. That's why he helped her in the mission with all the coins. They've been in this together. She picked me because Freddie voted for me, so actually I am the target now.
Yeah,
And maybe that'll convince Jake and Leanne. And of course, from this point, anyone banished won't reveal the truth. Maybe there's going to be some wild turn of events that they get rid of Frankie and then they get rid of Alexander, and
yeah,
it's just Charlotte left with Jake and Leanne, and Charlotte wins. I I don't think that'll happen. I think actually what I think may well happen is they get rid of Charlotte and then they just get rid of Frankie because they just
yeah,
all decide, well, one of you is lying, so we're not taking a chance. Let's just get rid of both of them.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
therefore, that's my prediction. I actually think Alexander, Jake, and Leanne are going to win as faithful.
I think I'm with you there. I think you're right. They will
Yeah.
get rid of Frankie because they won't believe both of them, and Charlotte will presumably to the until she's banished until the very end keep saying that Frankie's the traitor who's turning on her. So yeah, I think you're right. The other three will just go for safety's sake. Let's get rid of both of them, and then
Yeah.
they'll all three of them will ride off into the sunset together.
And Charlotte won't even get a goodbye speech to reveal her true accent. I don't think. I don't
Oh
think we're going to get the
yeah.
moment where she changes accent because presumably she gets voted off. She doesn't say
No.
a word.
Oh, that's really sad because
I
that
know.
makes it feel like it's all been for nothing,
Yeah.
particularly from our perspective. Oh,
So there's our predictions. We shall see. We're recording this obviously before the final. I have said this before in the podcast. I'm going to a live screening tonight at the Two Brewers in Clapham. So I'll be watching with an audience. I can't wait. It's going to be incredibly tense. Unless people are like the TV's not loud enough and everyone talks over it. Surely not. Surely people won't be paying to then
no,
just speak while
that'd be
it's on. So
respectful.
it'll be
Yeah.
great. And yeah, we'll see what happens. We've got a couple more things. We've got some questions, comments from listeners. The first one is a voice note from Emma, who sent this in on memo.fm.
Hi, Matthew. This is Emma. I love the podcast. I basically consume all of the Traitors content that exists on the internet, and yours is the best. So well done. You've touched a bit this series on producing misdirection in kind of the overall storyline of like what's going to happen in the future. But specifically for me, I think there's a little bit too much misdirection happening about the roundtable discussions. Obviously, we only see a short amount of the overall discussion, which probably sometimes takes like hours. But I feel like we could be shown a bit more of a representative sample of what's discussed at the table. I think by the end of watching that like 10-15 minutes of TV, we should have a decent idea who's going to go. I think that they're deliberately showing us a very selective picture so that the reveal of the round table is like more surprising. And it is more surprising, but like not in a very satisfying way because it just means that we then know who's gone, but we don't really fully understand the whole logic and back and forth that's led to that person being picked as opposed to every other person that's being discussed at the round table. I feel like maybe a bit of a reversion to how it's been in previous seasons would make that a bit more compelling. Anyway, thank you for the wonderful podcast. Please keep doing what you're doing because it's amazing. Bye.
So, thank you for that, Emma. That's a really interesting observation. So, there's too much misdirection at round table. The viewer should have a really good idea of what the outcome is going to be. Emma reckons it's specific to this season that we're being fooled a little bit. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Callum. I don't know if I don't mind. I actually don't mind being surprised by the outcome. I get the frustration if it to Emma if it feels like it's not fair. I couldn't have predicted that outcome based on what I saw in the discussions. I I haven't found that too much personally. I don't think the outcomes ever surprised me so much that I thought, oh, they didn't even discuss that person. So I've not been bothered by it, and I don't mind a little bit of a shock. I don't know if you've got any thoughts, Callum.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I particularly noticed it either. I suppose, I mean, what's funny is that like obviously we say, oh, are the producers just being selective about what they're putting in there? And I mean, yeah, they are. They will have like selected, what we're, meant to see. They definitely will have. But I think for me at least, they do it in a way that, as you say, I'm not like completely blindsided.
Mm,
I think maybe sometimes in the earlier episodes, maybe because there's so many more people, like lots of names get thrown out, and then sometimes it can be a little bit surprising how many votes maybe one person can get, and you're like, oh well, like they threw loads of names out and nobody got, and even though those names were thrown out, nobody actually voted for those people. I think that can sometimes be a little bit surprising, but generally, as you say, I'm the same as you. I've never been like, oh my gosh, I didn't see that coming. Like,
hmm
I couldn't believe that they voted for that person. That yeah, I don't know. I haven't noticed that myself. I don't think.
What Emma did remind me of is when, Emma, when you're saying we only see 10, 15 minutes, other people have suggested this over the course of the Traitors that maybe wouldn't it be great if we got like an extended edition of the Round Table as
Mm.
bonus content? And they've kind of done this in Canada. In the most recent series of Traitors Canada, there were two different versions of the episode. I don't think they varied very much, but you could watch one version which was about 45 minutes long or something. But I think it's Crave, maybe is like the online streaming service in Canada. There are extended editions of the episodes that have maybe an extra 7, 8, 9 minutes, and I wonder if a lot of that extra stuff is roundtable content.
Yeah.
So I quite like that idea. Maybe that could help inform you a little bit more of the discussions that have gone on. So maybe I would love like I think that's a fun solution.
What's interesting is how I suppose they do manage to keep it consistent in the sense that because you'll quite often get like people saying, "Oh, my name was never brought up at the round table," or "This person's name has never been brought up at the round table," and it's quite clever how they're quite consistent with that. That clearly, like, they're not cutting stuff out. You don't see any discrepancies between that where like I don't know, like somebody's name clearly has been mentioned, we just haven't seen it, or
hmm
like somebody's name hasn't been mentioned, but like like there's a consistency there, which is, I mean, I guess testament to how the show's made.
Yeah. We've got again there are so many different people commenting on YouTube, which is fantastic. It's great seeing all the discussion going on and all the theories. I've picked out one today from Ali F on YouTube, who actually commented this a few episodes back, but I kept it and it said Ali says, I find different international versions of the show interesting since it's a tiny reflection of each respective country. Because we've got Traitors Canada, New Zealand, we'd have Australia, there are all these European versions. Um, and Ali says, I thought this episode, which was episode 9, when Leon was banished, is a perfect reflection of British people always beating around the bush and not wanting to discuss the heart of the issue and wanting to appear nice and personable. I don't see this as a flaw of the people from the UK, just an interesting cultural thing. And I remember in that episode at the banishment, Leanne and Alexander had their head in their hands saying, I just don't know what to do. I'm so confused. Has anyone got any other suggestions? I don't know who to suspect. So I thought that was a funny observation and I'm assuming Ali maybe isn't from the UK then. Maybe not. I don't know if that's something you've noticed, Callum? Or actually, what I would like to ask you, Callum, is can you envision a Traitors Wales? And if so, anything you would like to see that is reflective of the Welsh people?
Oh, interesting. Tricky Wales. Um, I suppose, I mean, it would put Charlotte's theory to the test about, the Welsh accent
Being
being the most
trustworthy.
trustworthy accent. I feel as though in Wales we don't quite have that British politeness quite as much. As in the awkward like like Welsh people will say things as they are a little bit more, I think. What's interesting about that point though is that although I think that's true and um I definitely think you can look at the traitors and learn a lot about Britain and about our like strange quirks and whatnot. I do think people like Leanne do cut through that though. With her, it's like she doesn't beat around the bush. She does like say it as it is. So I mean, I guess you kind of see a couple of different sides of Britain when
Yeah,
you watch the traitors. You see that like really politeness like Alexander, and then you see the sort of perhaps more bolshy like just say it as it is like Leanne. But yeah, I would love a Welsh version. Oh,
yeah,
I know exactly where they could film it as well. Actually, I've just thought of that in my head. Where it would be a great place where they'd film it in Wales. We have so many great castles, so it would be great. But yeah, like a Welsh version would be. I mean, it would be hilarious.
yeah. And similarly, Scottish traitors. I think also Scottish traitors would not be polite,
Hmm.
gentle, timid. I think it could be quite chaotic. Not that I'm criticizing my own people, but I like Ali's observation. I think that's definitely true. I think it's certainly true of even if the show in these different countries doesn't necessarily reflect the entire culture of the country. I think it reflects the taste, the televisual taste of that
Yeah.
country. So, like US Traitors is reality stars and it's quite brash and it's quite in your face and it's
Yeah.
very loud characters. And I'm not making a comment about American people, but I think it's a reflection of the viewing tastes perhaps of some American viewers, and that's what they like in their reality shows. So I like that idea. Um, just one final email is from Megan, and Megan just made it's not a question, it's just an observation that I thought was great. Megan says, Hi Matthew, I'm loving your coverage of UK Season 3. After watching episode 10, I realised that not only is Alexander the only player from the deathmatch still in the game, he is also the only player from his original train car still in the game, despite having sacrificed himself. He's had quite a non-traditional show arc. I thought and I don't know who was on his carriage, but I'm assuming Megan is not lying to me. So that's hilarious that he sacrificed himself and is now the only one from that carriage left in the game. That's uh,
Yeah.
another reason why he should be Bond.
Oh,
He can
yes.
escape any dangerous situation.
Yeah, he can survive death essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, listeners, remember that Callum and I have been trying to deceive one another throughout this podcast in our game of lying and deception. Before we reveal everything, we've got a few important things to let you know about. Firstly, Callum, where can we find you online? What should we check out?
So if you so wish, you can find me on Instagram at comedy writer Cal. And if you also want to follow the page for my show as well, because I will be performing it again at some point in the future, then go to Strange Affair of Paul Play and for any sort of updates on that.
Yeah, and of course, the show is about the Traitors and about a
It is.
season of the Traitors in Australia. So yeah, fans of the pod, I know loads of you have seen that season, so you should definitely keep up to date with the show and where it may be reappearing. Now, as for this podcast, if you've enjoyed and you've been a regular listener, or maybe you just listened to this one episode and you had a nice time, it would be great if you could subscribe or leave a lovely review on whatever platform you're using. You can follow the podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at the Trader Podcast. And there are extra little things on there. I'll put little bits of information about the show on the stories and have funny little clips and stuff that I don't get time to put into the podcast. So there are extra things. Again, I've said this last few episodes. The YouTube page is almost at 800 subscribers, which is incredible. I know that's relatively not that much, but for me, it's very exciting. And I can't make back any money that I spend on the podcast from YouTube until there are 1,000 subscribers. So anyone listening who's not subscribed, it's super helpful if you just subscribe there, and it'd be very much appreciated. And you can leave comments on it on all those places. You can talk to other listeners about their theories and thoughts, and you can email me at thetradarpodcast@gmail.com. Or you could be like Emma. You could leave a voicemail at memo.fm/thetradarpodcast. And of course, Emma is now in the running as part of our competition to win this brand new Traitors board game. So anyone who leaves a voice message, you're going into the draw for this. Again, I'm afraid it is only for UK and Ireland entries, and I'll draw the winners very, very soon. I'll explain more about that in the finale episode. One final thing is to mention the coffee.com page for the podcast, because just in the last 24 hours, three people have sent in really, really kind donations. Alan, thank you. Laura, thank you. And Clark, thank you. It's very, very kind of you. Alan has donated before, so that's incredibly generous. That was at ko-fi.com/Matthew Keeley. That link's in the episode description. So that was really, really kind of those people. It just helps me pay for the things that I need to pay for the podcast. So thank you so, so much. Now, it is time for the reveal of the trader traitor. Callum, I have lied to you while we have been speaking today. Have you lied to me?
I have indeed.
Okay, you see, you were worried that it might not happen, but
I was worried.
you've deceived me, perhaps. I I only have one idea of what you lied about. Sometimes I've got a few suggestions. Like the last episode with my guest Neil, I was like, Neil, I've got like 10 things I think you were lying about. This time, one thing has stood out to me, and it may well be
Okay.
wrong. Do you have any thoughts about what I might have lied to you about?
I'm focusing so much on my own lie that I completely forgot to even consider that you might have been lying to me at any point. So you've gotten away with it because I can't even think for a moment what you would have been lying about. Is your name Matthew? No. No, I don't think I have any guesses
Okay,
whatsoever.
I'm giving you help. I'm giving you extra thinking time. I'll guess your lie, and maybe whilst we're talking, something will come
Okay.
to mind. I think your lie came sneakily hidden somewhere. You said that we were talking about Alexander, and you said that some people have compared you to Alexander, which I can believe. Very charming as well, Callum. And you'd make a great James Bond. I wonder if one of the people you mentioned was a lie. You said, oh, this person mentioned it and this person mentioned it. So I thought one of those could have been a fabrication. Is that your lie?
I'll be honest, the whole thing was a lie. Nobody's compared me to Alexander. I mean, what, like, am I living in a fantasy world? Of course they haven't compared me to Alexander.
No, don't. I can see it. I was with you. I was like, oh yeah, yeah. I'm sure people have said that.
Oh,
Sure, I was on
well, I'm
board.
very flat. You're the first person then. Yeah, no, nobody before you had ever said that. That was a complete fabrication.
So what you're saying is I'm a really good traitor hunter.
You are a very good traitor hunter, indeed.
Yeah, it's take again. I usually am terrible at this game. Most of the season of the podcast, I get it all wrong. In the last couple of episodes, I've
Yeah,
picked up my game. I'm quite impressed with myself.
nice.
Um, but Callum, has
By
anything sprung to
contrast,
mind?
no, you've got such a trustworthy face and voice that throughout it, I feel as though there was nothing that you could have possibly said to me that, well, maybe possibly about where you're seeing the live, where you're seeing
Hmm,
the
the
showing, the
screening,
screening
yeah.
of the Traitors episode. But I think you'd already told me that in a message anyway, and so that would have really been planting the seeds. So apart from that, I don't think I have anything to offer.
Okay, I will reveal that I am not devious enough to have planted a lie before now, so that everything I said about the screening was true. My
Okay.
lie was we were talking about the mission. I really hope that you didn't pick up on this because I thought if you've made notes better than I have on the mission, I could be caught out. I was
Okay.
talking about the dolls, and I said that there was what were the dolls? Jean, and there was Camilla, which was true. And I sneaked in a lie about one of the dolls. I said one of them was called Ethel, and I just made that up.
I did think that. I didn't necessarily think that you were like that was a like, but I thought this is weird that he's gone into such detail to name them, and I I should have picked up on that. Yeah, damn it, you're good, you're good.
So I'm sorry. If any listeners, if I've accidentally named the doll was called Ethel, then I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't. So I made that up.
It's
So
very good.
I got you, I guess. I'm a traitor.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and I have been from the beginning. Uh, Callum, I've had such a great time with you discussing episode 11. Such a good episode to talk about. I hope being on the podcast has lived up to what you expected.
Very much so. It feels weird that I listened to so many episodes, particularly one particular episode with Paul. I listened to that so many times, and suddenly I'm here. So it's certainly lived up to our expectations. It's a past expectations, I
Oh.
should say. Thank
Th-
you.
Thank you so much for joining me. And listeners, yeah, I'm shortly on my way to a live screening of final episode of Traitors UK Series 3, hosted by Detective Maddie from season 1. How could we forget? Can't wait. I'll be back to record the final episode of the pod. Well, perhaps not the final episode of the pod. I'll come back to that next time with David Bloomberg. He's going to be back with me to recap that final episode. Until then, keep us on your radar.